Today in our 2016 GMC Sierra 2500, we'll be having a look at and installing the Air Lift LoadLifter 5000 Ultimate Air Helper Springs with Internal Jounce Bumpers. Part number AL88338. Now the reason you want these is because when we have a heavy load in the back of our truck or we're towing a heavy trailer with a high tongue weight, it alters the characteristics of the handling of our truck. The back end will squat down on the ground and the front end will rise, giving us poor braking, increased tire wear, decreased handling, and also changing our headlight angle. With these installed supplementing our vehicle suspension, it'll give us the extra comfort that we need and the extra safety that we need in order to maintain factory ride conditions with up to 5,000 pounds of weight on the truck. Now when operating these airbags, it's important to keep in mind that they have a range of air pressure from 5 psi at the minimum up to 100 psi. All right, the first thing we want to do before we do our install is get a couple measurements here and find out where our truck sits with factory ride height. Completely stock truck right now. We have no weight in the bed of the truck at all. So this will give us a good baseline measurement to compare what happens when our truck's loaded down. So we're just going to measure through the center line of the wheel up to the top of our wheel arch here, and we're sitting about 43 3/4 of an inch. All right, we're going to get the same measurement on the front now. Okay, we're about 39 1/2 inches. All right, now we'll place some weight in the bed of our truck to simulate towing a heavy load or carrying a heavy cargo, and we'll check our measurements again. Okay, we're about 41 1/2 inches in the rear now, which means we've dropped about 2 1/4 of an inch. And we're about 40 inches in the front, so we've came up about 1/2 an inch. Now these measurements, we want to keep these in mind and compare them after we install our airbags, because when the suspension ride height changes, that affects a few key characteristics of your truck. Not only will it affect your handling, but it'll affect your tire wear in the front as well, because your tires will now be raised up a little bit and camber on inward like this. Finally, our headlight angle will change as well, because the back of the truck is squatting, the front comes up. We could potentially blind oncoming drivers while we're going down the road, and we won't have the best vision. Our headlights will be aimed more towards the trees versus down on the road, making it difficult and potentially unsafe for us to see at night. All right, with our weight back in the bed of our truck with our airbag system installed and about 30 pounds of air in the system, we'll double check our measurements and see where we're at. Okay, we're back to 43 3/4 in the rear, so we're back to the factory ride height. Let's double check the front. Okay, at the front, we're back to 39 1/2 as well, which means we're back at factory ride height in the front too. Now we'll show you a side-by-side comparison of what it looks like. All right, as you can see, when we're going around corners, our vehicle is much more planted now. When we're doing abrupt maneuvering or swerving, we don't have to worry about the bed shifting on the truck. The whole vehicle is a lot more planted to the ground, giving us a smoother and more safe ride. Now when we go over bumps, you can see how harsh it is with the factory suspension and how much more subdued it is with the air lifts installed. It helps absorb some of the jouncing and some of the bumps as we go over rough terrain. The air lift springs will give us a load leveling capacity up to 5,000 pounds. Now I just want to point out, this doesn't increase our gross vehicle weight rating an additional 5,000 pounds. It'll just help maintain our factory ride quality with up to 5,000 pounds of weight in the bed of the truck, or us towing a heavy gooseneck or fifth wheel trailer. All right, we have our truck raised on a lift right now, and for video purposes, we removed our spare tire to make our install easier, to give us a little bit more room to work and for you to see better. Also, we want to have our rear suspension dangling as much as possible in order to install our airbag suspension. Now, to give us even more room to work, we're going to remove the rear wheels. Okay, sometimes you may find your wheels are stuck, so what you can do is put one lug nut on partially to help hold the wheel in place. Take a rubber mallet and hit the inside edge of the tire, knocking loose the corrosion, and the wheel comes off. So you take your lug nut off, pull the wheel off. All right, now that we have our tires off of our truck, we can assemble our airbag. We'll take one airbag assembly, one of our plates here. We'll make sure that the airbag sits inside the recessed area. Stick it on top. So we'll take our airline fitting now. We'll screw it into our airbag. Once we have it finger tight, we'll take a wrench and we'll tighten it 1.5 turns. Okay, so there's 1.5. Now we'll take our bracket. You notice it has an L on it. That means it's for the left side. This is our upper bracket. Our right side bracket will have an R on it. Our lower brackets are the same on both sides. We want to make sure that our airline fitting will point away from our bracket. We'll take our flat bolts here and we'll screw them together. Now we'll snug these down. Please use a 7/32 Allen key. Okay, with those snug down, we'll flip our assembly over. Place on our other cup assembly. Again, our airbag sits inside the recessed area. Alright, so the side of our airbag assembly, where the airline fitting is, we're going to line that side up with the angled side of our lower bracket here. And again, we'll use the same flat screws to secure it into place. Make sure your holes all line up. Alright, now we'll tighten up our bolts. We'll repeat the same process for the other airbag assembly. Right now, on our driver's side of our rear axle, we'll find a 13mm bolt that holds our ABS line in place as well as our brake line. We'll remove that. We go up to our driver's side frame rail. We'll find another 13mm bolt that holds our parking brake cable up. We'll remove that one as well too. Take our parking brake cable off and remove the bracket. Okay, now our rubber bump stop here. We'll need to remove this. We can just do that with a flathead screwdriver. Go up inside and we'll pry it down. Sometimes these are stuck in there a decent amount. You just got to keep working at it until it starts to come out. There it goes. Okay, now we can take our airbag assembly. Our airline fitting needs to be on the inside, pointing towards the middle of the truck. We'll slide it in, like so. Get our bracket around. We'll make sure our brake line assembly here is on the outside of our bracket. Okay, right above where our bump stop was on our driver's side, inner frame rail, we'll find a wiring harness. We're going to pop this loose from the frame by pulling out on the clips, and that'll give us room to insert our U-bolts. We'll also want to make sure that our brake lines here are free away from the frame rail. Pull them out and wedge in a tool here temporarily to give us some room. Okay, now we'll take one of our U-bolts here, stick it over our frame, where it'll slide down, and we'll just get in the general vicinity of where we need to go. This is for our back section of our bag. Our front one, we'll start from outside the frame, and we'll make sure it cleared all of our brake lines and wires on the inside. All right, you can see how the U-bolt is between the frame and the brake lines. That's where we want it to be. We don't want it to pinch the brake lines against the frame of the truck. Okay, with our U-bolts in place, we'll now raise our airbag assembly up. Make sure the U-bolts go into the holes. Place on a flat washer, and a nylon lock nut. And we'll do the same for all 4 corners of our two U-bolts. Okay, now we'll snug down our bolts a little bit using a 14mm socket. The one nut closest to our fuel tank, you'll need to use a ratcheting wrench or a Slimline ratchet and socket in order to snug that one down. Okay, now we'll torque all of our hardware to the amount specified in the instructions in a crisscross pattern. Okay, now we'll drop down our carriage bolts into our lower bracket. We'll do this on both sides. Now we'll take our strap, place on a washer and a nylon lock nut. Okay, now we'll use a pole jack. You can also use a floor jack or whatever you have just to raise the rear axle up slightly. You don't need to go a lot, just a little bit. Okay, with that raised up a little bit, we now have room to get our washer on the other bolt and the other nut. Now we'll snug these down a little bit. When we snug these down, we make sure we go as even as possible. Now we'll torque our hardware to the amount specified in the instructions evenly. All right, with that done, we can now lower our axle back on down. Okay, now we'll take our M8 bolt that's short and a washer, and we'll reattach our brake line to the axle. Our bracket here is threaded on one side, and there's a hole for this hook to bite into on the other. So we'll get the hook in there and re-thread in the bolt. Okay, now we'll use a 13mm socket to tighten that bolt up. Okay, now we're going to reattach our parking brake cable to our driver's side frame with the new bracket that comes with our kit. We'll slide it over the cable, push it back closed here. We'll slide it down the cable. Okay, we'll just squeeze these together and we'll place them over the U-bolt that's closest to our gas tank. And we'll thread on the nut, the flange nut that comes with our kit, to secure it in place, and we'll tighten it down. Now we'll repeat the same process on the passenger side. The only exception on the passenger side from the driver's side is that we had to relocate our parking brake cable right here to the front side of our axle with the included bolt in our kit. No difference there at all. We still have the brake line and the ABS line on the back side to mount to. Okay, now that both of our airbags have been installed, we need to make a location for our airline fittings to be mounted. We're going to go on our step area of our bumper here, right in front of where our license plate light is. We'll go right in the middle, and we'll drill out a hole with a 5/16 drill bit. We've already verified that there's nothing behind that we're going to drill into. We'll do the same on the other side of the bumper too. Okay, now we'll take one end of our airline tubing. It comes together all as one piece. We already cut it in half to give us two equal length sections. We'll thread on, or we'll screw on one of our nuts to the bottom of the thread. Place on one of the star washers. Reach up from underneath the bumper. Push it through the hole. Place on the black rubber washer. Place on a flat washer. And we'll thread on another nut. We'll snug this nut down to hold it in place. Okay, with that snug down, we'll do the same for the other side. All right, on our driver's side, here's where our airline sticks out by Heiner license plate light. We left a small loop behind the bumper, and we routed it over our cross members of our frame, securing it along the way with a couple of zip ties to our wiring harness, leaving us with a nice little loop down here where we can plug into our airline fitting. So we'll go ahead and cut off the excess. They'll give you a nice, clean, and straight cut, so you don't have to worry about any leaks. Now with that trimmed off, we'll plug it into our airline fitting on top of the airbag, we'll push it in until it stops. Once it's in all the way, we'll pull back and make sure it's secure. Now on our passenger side, again, our Airline comes out right in front of the license plate light. We left a loop behind our bumper here. Then it goes up over our cross members. We have secured this wiring harness here. And again here, trying to keep it as close to the frame as possible so it's farther away from the exhaust. Then we also secured it in 2 spots to our U-bolts that hold our airbag assembly in place. I slid on a piece of heat protective tubing that comes with the kit. That way we can adjust it as necessary for where it's close to the exhaust. We'll just place that right about here. That'll probably be the best spot. And tighten that up a little bit more. Now we'll measure off about how much we'll need of our Airline tubing here. Make a cut and plug it in. All right, now on our passenger side, because of the close proximity of our airbag to the exhaust, a heat shield is provided for us to attach. We're going to put it in this general vicinity here to help direct the heat away from our airbag. But we need to bend the tabs accordingly on our heat shield first in order to do that. So we'll bend our tabs down, then we'll bend it back across. This will give us an air gap of about 1/2 inch, which is what we're looking for. Just like that. Now we'll attach this to our exhaust with the 2 provided clamps. We'll first take a 5/16 bit, loosen them up so they're open. With those open, we can now raise this up, make sure our clamp goes around the tab and the exhaust. Sometimes it's easier just to get the clamp to start again where you have the heat shield in place. Okay, with both of our clamps now started, we'll hold our heat shield in place, put the clamp over it, tighten the clamp down. We'll just bend this a little bit to give us more clearance around the airbag too. Okay, now we'll inflate both of our airbags to about 30 psi and check for leaks. All right, we'll start checking for leaks by checking our Schrader valves here. Spraying down with some soapy water. And if we don't see any air bubbles, we know we're good. We'll spray our lines where they go under our airbags as well, and the fitting where it goes in the airbag. All right, as you can see, we have no bubbles coming from any of our fittings or any of our connections. So now we know we have an airtight system. All right, now that we have verified we have no leaks, we'll place our tires back on. And that completes our look at and installation of the Air Lift LoadLifter 5000 Ultimate Air Helper Springs with Internal Jounce Bumpers. Part number AL88338 on our 2016 GMC Sierra 25.
Click the link below to shop, learn more, or visit us at etrailer.com.